So what we have on the bench today is the Banggood Christmas Tree with MP3 function, colorful RGB LED flash kit with transparent cover. And it is indeed exactly as described. The Christmas tree itself is rather interesting. It's kind of a takeoff on many of the old printed circuit board Christmas trees that started out way back in the early 2000s. It's just a simple two transistor circuit with current limiting resistors and some capacitors to create the oscillator. The um, different thing with this one is that instead of using standard LEDs, they are using RGB LEDs. So these LEDs actually have a, if you can see that, camera's kind of washing it out, but what happens here is the little microchip inside slow flashes, fast flashes, slow fades the LED, and they accomplish the randomness of the appearance of the uh, tree simply by turning them on and off in sequences. So it makes a fairly effective display, as you can see, and it's pseudo-random. If you sit and stare at it, you can see some patterns evolving, but it's very rare that you will see the same color in any one place any too frequently. Um, the way that I assembled the kit was to do the two tree parts first. And the thing to keep in mind here is everybody's going to see your work, so make sure you do a particularly good job soldering and laying the parts down flat, etc. The difficulty in assembling this kit is really on the bottom side. As you can see here, everything is SMD for the MP3 player, and it is a very minimalist MP3 player. There's not a whole lot to it. And in fact, U1 right here, they actually scrubbed the numbers off, so you can't even see what it is. And that's really the brains of the outfit is right there. That's the microcontroller that's decoding the MP3s, reading the flash card, etc., etc. The only other chip down here on the bottom is this little guy, and he's just an audio amplifier. And we get one teeny tiny speaker, which is almost useless. It tells you something's playing. You can kind of hear it, but it's not super loud. It doesn't sound all that great. But to compensate for that, over here we have a stereo 3.5 millimeter output jack. Send that to some powered speakers, and it's a lot more effective. I mean, you could even plug a Bluetooth into there to make the Christmas tree MP3 player broadcast to your Bluetooth speakers. The other thing that's rather interesting and I find kind of odd is there are 4 LEDs placed around the bottom. Those LEDs in my case are pink, and Big Clive would like that they're pink. Those LEDs only operate when the MP3 player is in operation. In fact, if you have it in pause mode, they just sit there on. When it's playing, they just flash on and off, but it's not a flash on and off that has anything to do with the music. That would have been really nice if they would have, got plenty of real estate in here. They could have easily added a few transistors to sample off some of the sound and make those LEDs actually have some interaction with whatever is playing on the Christmas tree. The way I went about this is I assembled the Christmas trees, the branches of the trees, if you will, first. Soldered all the little components on, did the transistors and capacitors, then did the LEDs. And then if you notice down on the bottom of each tree part, there is a minus and a plus. If you apply 5 volts to that once you have the circuitry completed, that will actually activate most of the, or all of the tree section, and you can make sure that all your work is correct. If you do it this way, you got to make sure not to mount this top LED, because that actually crosses the slice between the 2 boards where you slide them together before soldering them into the base. And down on the base, I don't know if you'll be able to see it clearly here, but it's pretty well illustrated in the downloaded instructions. there is a minus and a plus on the board, and you have to make sure that you put the trees in correctly or things will not work. It's, like I said, fairly well illustrated in the downloadable instructions from the Banggood product page. So have a look at that. The other thing about this speaker is the screws that were included with mine did not even make it all the way through the acrylic plate and the speaker. So I just added a couple of 440 screws and nuts to hold the speaker in place. And that'll be fine for the little bit that I am actually going to utilize that speaker. In actual practice, I will probably have the thing connected to a set of powered speakers. The acrylic case is very typical laser cut acrylic case. Everything lines up fine. To hold it all together, there are really small, what look like 2mm screws that go through one section to the other with nuts placed on the inside. And then you just tighten those screws down. That holds the case together quite firmly. And it's very effective. Many DIY projects that you can download from places like Thingiverse use this method of mounting everything together, and it works pretty well. The disappointing part here is these are actually countersunk screws, but the acrylic is not countersunk. So they kind of stick out a little bit, but they're so small. I don't think it's really it's not a deal breaker in my mind. The slots for the nuts are very tight, so you got to make sure that when you slide the nut in that you have it perfectly centered in that hole. And what I have done is I will kind of maneuver the nut in there with a pair of tweezers or a small needle nose while I have the screw in the hole. And once the screw hits that hole, it won't let the nut fall through down into the case. You can see I got my case mostly assembled here, but I left it some of the screws and nuts out so that I can just wedge this open and stick the bottom piece in there, because it'd be really hard to assemble this case with all of the pieces one at a time. And you just got to make sure that you put the 3 holes where the 3 holes. There is a left, a right, and a back and a front to the 4 pieces of the case, and they correspond to the pieces on the Christmas tree. The last thing I should let you know about, if you're not familiar with these really simple MP3 players that a lot of Chinese sellers have, there's only 3 buttons on it, and those 3 buttons have multiple functions. So this one is just toggles between play and pause. This one goes back 1 track. This one goes forward 1 track. If you push and hold this one, the volume goes down. If you push and hold this one, the volume goes up. That's all the controls we have, is those 3. I think that's about it. I really wish these pink LEDs on the bottom here would go with the music. Oh well. Still a cool kit. It'll make a nice display piece at Christmas time. I'm probably going to take it to my office and set it on my desk. Thanks.